som ser på nå kanskje har merket, så det litt grann trøbbel med det stemmegreiene. Det sånn at internett har ikke kommet helt i mål. Vi I 2020, og det har jeg visst ganske lenge, for jeg veldig svak for brevgiro, og du jo veldig skeptisk til internett sånn generelt.
Jeg så off-grid som det går an å få blitt. Jeg har ikke lappen engang og sykler, og synes internett noen vanskelige greier, men det jobbes nå på spreng for å prøve å ordne opp I det. Men nå det altså nede.
We are currently down. Yeah, that was quite a night. It's more than 2 years ago now, but I still get that kind of scary feeling when I see that video. So it still kind of hurts. And today we're going to talk a bit about what happened that particular night, and also what we're trying to do to prevent nights like that from happening. And we are...
My name is Ingrid. I'm a tech lead at NRK.no, and I have worked at NRK for 4 years now.
Mm-hmm. My name is Jon Arne. I'm also a tech lead at NRK.no. I've been at NRK since 2015 or something like that, I think. Oops.
Okay, so first I'm going to take a step back and ask what is NRK? NRK is the Norwegian Broadcasting Corporation, and we are currently about 3,500 employees. And as you can guess, we work in the tech department, and we have these products. We have NRK.no, which is our site. We also have NRK TV for streaming and television. We have NRK Radio for radio stations and podcasts. And we have NRK Super for the children. Yeah. We also have digital historieutvikling, which is more like one-offs and special cases. And we have teams for login, data, recommendations, and many other internal teams. And we have YR, which is the weather service. And just some numbers before we get started. We are about 370 developers, designers, team leaders in the tech department, and additional 100 consultants, I think. And we are very much used. 4 of 5 people in Norway use NRK every day, and we are very proud of that.
Yeah, I think I heard some statistics that the reach of NRK's products is, I think 90% of the population use some sort of NRK product each day, which is more than the percentage of people drinking water every day. So that's insane, but I don't know who these people are who not drinking water.
We promise, yeah.
Yes. So that's NRK. We're here representing NRK.no. So as Ingrid said, we are the main news site for NRK. Anyone visiting a news site might just see the outer, see it as a normal web page, but as all of us developers know, there's a lot more happening behind the scenes than just delivering that web page. I think we have somewhere around 40, 60 different services and applications and microservices and whatnot being used to deliver the news front page and the other articles and stuff. And we have a very loyal user base. Somewhere around 60% of our users visit us more than 4 days a week. A very loyal user base, and I think probably around 1.5 million site views on an average day. Very proud of that. We're proud of being trusted, well-liked, and popular. It's very nice to be popular, but sometimes it gets a bit out of hand. There is a thing as being too popular and have too many visitors.
But some events we can see coming from a mile away, as you can see in the picture. And I'm talking about known events that we know will get increased traffic. And unlike the previous slide, we don't look at the audience as our enemy. The audience is actually the reason we do what we do. So we create events to generate more page views and more audience and more users. And I'm going to go through some of the large events we have had at NRK in the last few years. First, I'm going to talk about Maskorama, which is a Norwegian version of The Masked Singer. And the new season is 15th of October. You should know that, yes. And the first episode of Maskorama last year was viewed by 1.14 million people, and that's a lot. And we have interaction with the audience, both on while it's on air, but also during the week you can guess who is behind the mask.
But it's obviously more during the actual show, because that's when you get the hints and stuff like that.
And we do have a limited time slot for voting during the show. And NRK.no is not actually involved in the voting. The voting is on a separate rig. But when you go to the rig, you usually go through NRK.no. So here's a graph of our front page, and you can guess. This is the front page of NRK.no, the news site. You can guess when the presenter asks the audience to go to NRK.no to vote. And this shows how everything that happens at NRK, it's all combined together.
So even though the URL shown on the page might be the one going directly to the voting app, most people just go to type in NRK, or even Google just NRK to get to the front page, and then follow any links or stuff on the front page to the voting. So everything is interconnected there.
And then you have another event, singing event, Stjernekamp, Norwegian Singing Contest. It's quite similar, but the difference here is the voting window, which is the same for every artist. And if it's not fair. So people enter the page when they are supposed to vote during the show. And even though we ask people to log on earlier to register, they don't.
No.
So you can guess that when it's time to vote, everyone goes in at the same time.
And it's a very short window of voting, so all of the traffic is combined within these windows.
And then we have a different type of event. NRK is owned and funded by the government. We have the Norwegian Broadcasting Corporation Statement of Commitments in Norwegian Samfunnsoppdraget. And one of the things we are supposed to do is supporting and strengthening democracy by, and as it says here, the purpose of the NRK's overall public media services is to meet democratic, social and cultural needs in society. And that means that one of the biggest events at NRK is the election. And as you probably know, the voting booth closes at 9 o'clock. That means that at 9 o'clock we have the pre-voted results, and we have the forecast of who's going to win. And it's very important that we deliver at 9 o'clock and not before, because then the election might be invalid, and not too late, because then we don't fulfill the statement of commitments.
Yeah, because part of that commitment is to deliver information to the public. So even though you might get that same forecast from other media outlets, we're not doing our job if we're not presenting that information to the public.
And it's quite, well, it's an important day. We had 17 million page views last election. That's quite a lot. And you can probably guess at looking at this graph when the clock is 9 o'clock.
Yeah. I think that's a 16-fold increase in load at that point. So it's and again, if we do it any earlier, they might be invalid because the voting booths are still open. So you have to hit that spot, and everyone refreshes at that time to get those results.
It's quite exciting.
Yeah.
And then we have sports events. These are large events on TV and online, and we're not a very sports-interested team, so it's not always that we know about them.
So we are talking about planned events, and these are obviously planned events, but it's yeah.
And we're quite surprised. In 2021, 613,000 people watched a biathlon final at NRK, and none of us did. So we should know about them in advance. So to sum these events up, like, they have some similar features. We should know about them in advance. And since we know about them, we should also know some kind of how much traffic we expect based on similar events or previous events. And we have time to make preparations. We should have time to make preparations. And based on this, we calculate the expected traffic, as I said. And then we scale up. And it's a hard question, how much should we scale up? And we usually scale up based on how much we expect and our normal daily use at the same time. So we summarize those two. Because the people watching Maskorama and the people that enter to watch or read the news might not be the same people. And then we do load testing, and if the load testing does not go well, we scale up more, or at least we should. And then we have DDoS protection that detects unusual user behavior, and we put this in event mode because usually the user pattern is different during events. So, well, we have some examples of we have not done that earlier. And we also try to deliver content from cache. Usually we have, for instance, at the front page, we have different versions to do A/B testing on small news headliners. Yeah, and during important events, we turn it off because then we can cache more. We also turn up the number of seconds we cache each page because it's more important to get updates than to get them very fast. And it's also, during the event, we have dashboards to monitor our application to see if they are they doing as they should. And we have developers available on call or on site, depending on the importance of the event.
Yes, the dashboards are obviously important to know if your on-call developers need to handle something. So we're ready to act if something happens during the events, because it is planned, we know about it, we're able to take these prepared measures. But sometimes some things might catch us off guard, catch us by surprise. It's not everything you can plan for. It's the news. It's going to happen when it happens. We can't control that. If the Progressive Party decides to leave the government, we can't control when they do that, even though we might be accused of controlling stuff like that. So important news happen at any time, and if you have the NRK.no mobile app and have push notifications enabled, you're going to get a push notification stating that something important has happened. And if it's relevant to you, you're going to open that up, and that correlates almost one-to-one to traffic on our end. So that means we get these peak surges of traffic when a big event happens. So, for example, this is, I think, from September 8th, the day Queen Elizabeth passed. So at, I think, 2-ish, the initial push on that she was unwell, that the doctors had arrived and stuff like that. That was in the first sort of larger peak. More events happened during the evening. And then at 7:30, the big one, the confirmation that she had passed. And that's, is it 9,000 or so opening push messages per minute. And that translates, again, to a surge of traffic on the NRK.no service and servers. And it isn't just breaking news situations that might cause this sudden surge of traffic. So there's still a lot of people watching normal linear television, in effect watching the same thing at the same time. And if a channel host, for some reason, says, and you can read more about this at NRK.no now, a lot of people will do that at the same time. So it's the same kind of traffic that we get from push. It's not the same scale as we get from the push notifications, but it's the same kind of peak-based traffic caused by something happening, and everyone responding to that immediately at the same time. And some common features from these unplanned events is that they are obviously sudden and unexpected. They happen at random times. They might actually usually happen outside of normal work hours, so there might not be developers or people available to handle it. And they are usually of a quite short duration, meaning that there might not be time to take any actions to handle it, to scale up something or things like that. So some of the measures we use to try to prevent situations when there's breaking news is obviously we're scaled for increase. And by that I mean we have the sort of normal default scaling on our servers for normal usual traffic, and then we add a bit on top of that for any unforeseen events that might happen. Of course, we can't scale for the worst case. That'll be a waste of resources because we're not there most of the time. So, and we're publicly funded. We don't want to waste your guys' money. So we scale for increase so that we can handle most breaking news events. Of course, again, cache most things. We're a news site. We need to deliver updates, so we can't really cache interminably. But a lot of stuff can be cached. Define critical services. That's important, whatever your operations is. When we talk about delivering news, when you talk about Maskorama, for instance, you have to log in to vote. So during a voting session on Maskorama, it's important that the login functionality works. That's crucial for that show. But during a normal news event, it's not really important if the user can log in or not. It's not important if you see your username at the top of the screen, or if you want to, for some reason, update your profile information the same minute that Queen Elizabeth has passed. It's okay if that fails. The important thing at that point is to being able to deliver the news to the public. And during these events, they are of short duration, so there's not a lot we can do, so we have to rely on automatic services. So auto-scaling, obviously. Some services take longer to scale up than others. That means we have to adjust our triggers accordingly. If we know that some microservice takes, say, a minute to get ready, then obviously we need to have that trigger, have that scaling more trigger happy. We might scale up unnecessarily because the event wasn't that big, but it's better to then have scaled it up for a bit and then scale down again when nothing happens.
We have learned that the hard way.
And of course, alarms and events, so that we can be notified if this is sort of a precursor of some bigger events going to happen. And that might also be relevant. And even though it's 2022, we have to mention this guy. So in March of 2020, everyone in Norway went home from work and stayed there. And suddenly everyone was very increasingly news interested, started keeping up with news much more than the usual case, and the news updates became more frequent. So this was a sudden event, but unexpected, obviously, but it was not the short duration that these breaking news events usually have. This was a prolonged event, and that meant it gave us the opportunity to adapt to the new normal, the new traffic patterns and such. Actually, Ingrid mentioned the event mode for DDoS protection. We enabled that full time at the start of the pandemic, because the usage patterns on our site was more akin to during a large event rather than the normal every day. And also, we mentioned our mission to meet social and cultural and democratic needs in society. And during the pandemic, that became even more important, the social and cultural part of it, because since people couldn't go out and meet each other in public, we had to try to become that meeting ground. So we actually we started something called Together Alone, I think, or Always Together, where it was a 24/7 live stream and chat where people could meet and interact socially and have a sort of common meeting ground at NRK.no. So this was unexpected but long-lasting. So it's a different kind of a hybrid of the two types of events we've been talking about so far. Meaning that there was no planned measures, but we had time to and take action to enable some of the measures we have talked about for planned events. And recently, there's been another example, unfortunately, of a sudden but long-lasting news event. Just like during the pandemic, this was an event that increased the news interest in the public. Obviously, when one of our neighboring countries goes to war, when that's the push notification, you're going to open that notification. and people started following this with increased frequency, and that gave us the prolonged traffic. And we were able to use some of what we learned during the pandemic, take some of the same measures with regards to scaling and stuff like that in this different type of event. It brought with it something else that we've experienced before, but not on this scale, I think. So this summer we were actually the target of multiple DDoS attacks. So DDoS attacks are obviously they're not unlike normal user traffic, but well, we had that slide in the start where we visualized our visitors as flesh-eating zombies intent on killing us. But and we know that that's not the case. But these guys are actually out to get us. They are out to break the site. So they try to find ways of trying to pass through the cache, trying to find other kind of usage patterns that do not match our expected usage patterns. So that poses quite an interesting challenge. We're not going to cover that in this talk, but it might be a good topic for another talk later. So to get back on track, I guess a summary of what we've been talking about so far.
There are some preparation you should do before the known events. And this is mainly for the known events. So you calculate the expected traffic based on knowledge from previous events or similar events, and you scale up your applications and do the load testing again and again till it's fine. And then you turn on event mode, and you try to deliver content from cache. And then the last point here is clarify all your critical parts. Which applications are the most important? If something is going to go down, which application would you like it to be? We run everything on Kubernetes, and we have a criticality on every application running there from 1 to 4. 1 is the most important, because if I could choose, I would rather have the front page up than some small widget in an article. So that is automatically criticality used in practice.
I think we should stress this part a bit more. You can't do any of this unless you know all your apps and integrations and your system and all entire architecture. Because, well, talking about load testing, you really want to test your production environment, but the intent of load testing is to break your system, and you might not want to do that with a live production environment. No. So you try to duplicate it. You try to make it as close as possible to your live environment, but you're cutting some corners. You're mocking something. You're you're not doing everything the same, because that might not be feasible. So how do you know if you're actually getting close enough? How do you know you're not mocking away the parts that are going to break? Because it's never the part you know. Never the part that you're worried about that's going to break. If you knew what was going to break, you would fix it in advance. So you need to know your entire system. That might not be feasible for any one person in a team. So the team as a whole need to have all the details of everything, and then include the relevant people when planning load testing. Now, how do you know which people to involve? Know your apps and applications.
And the preparation in advance is great, but control during the event is even more important. So we have mentioned this, but good dashboard, so you can see that the applications are behaving as you want them to. And if they don't, you need developers available to fix it. We don't have developers available at all time. During events, we have developers either on call or on site. That depends on how important the event is. And we have auto-scaling because, well, it's better to automatically scale up your application than doing it manually. It's faster. You don't need developers available. Yeah, you should do that if you can. And we have alarms so that we can know if something does not go as planned.
So, but things do not always go as planned. Mistakes happen, errors happen, outages happen. So how do we handle it when stuff actually breaks? Well, first of all, we try to live by the mantra that everyone makes mistakes. It's okay. You can't go around being afraid of deploying to production. That's just no way to live. So it's better that something might break and we can fix it and we can learn from it. And we learn from it by discussing what happened. So after a major outage, something that affects the public, we always have these post-mortems where we try to dissect the situation, what happened, what failed, how could it have been, how did we fix it, how could it have been prevented, what do we need to do to prevent it from happening again. So we get a lot of action points and a lot of learning from that, and we try to involve everyone, all the stakeholders from the relevant systems involved in the outage, everyone involved in debugging during the situation, and things like that. And we also try to practice, again, everyone makes mistakes. The postmortems are blameless. We're not out to find who did something wrong. And we don't want any scapegoats. The important thing is sharing information, learning from it. And even the smaller errors that might not be visible to the public, we try to gather them up. We have weekly or regular developer meetups in our team where we discuss all the errors that might have happened since last time to share the knowledge. And I think that in order to communicate what went wrong, you really need to understand it. You need to have internalized what happened to be able to share with someone else. And that means that you've actually learned from it yourself. And by sharing it with others, you're passing on that knowledge, and they might say, oh, that might happen to our system. We should probably fix that before it breaks. So sharing stories of failure is a learning experience both for the people sharing and the sharee, the person getting the information.
So then we are gonna share some of our failures from recent years. We are quite comfortable talking about these now, but it hurt a lot. Yeah. And I started by saying that the election is a huge deal at our NRK. So I'm gonna start with an error from the election 2019. I said we have DDoS protection on, and we do. But we were gonna do a load test, and we had done load test all day, and we were ready for the night, and then we turned on the DDoS protection again, and then someone decided to do a load test, and what happens? You get alarms everywhere. And we don't want that right before 9 o'clock, because it's stressful. It's just bad communication, I guess. Yeah. But other than that, everything went fine that election. So the next election, last year, we decided to use the template from 2019. So we did everything that the template said. We scaled up all the applications. We did the load test. Everything was fine. And during election night, we actually realized we had made a new application since the previous election. And we had not, and that was not in the template. So we hadn't scaled it up. It was a news ticker on the top of the front page. I don't know if you noticed, because we did deliver news and forecast to the public, but not on the top. It said, forecast is almost ready. And it said that a long time after the forecast was out. Yeah.
So that ticker up top was not updated. And again, people were able to read the news just below that, and I don't think a lot of people noticed. We noticed.
We noticed a lot. And yeah, everyone at NRK that worked with us, they noticed. Yeah. And they but the front page was up, other than that.
So again, that's what we, I guess, in hindsight, would call an acceptable outage. It didn't really matter because we were able to deliver the news, but it hurt at the time. And another example, it's not a recent example, it's from quite, I think, 5 or maybe 10 years ago. There was this TV show called Monsen på tur, where the adventurer Lars Monsen would travel to or would be sent to somewhere in Norway and try to figure out where he was. And some weeks before the premiere of the show, the TV production people came to NRK.no and said, we want to do something online for this. We want some mapping service where the people following the show at home can look online and try to look at the maps and figure it out. And we had a mapping service used for small maps in the articles. And we're like, well, we'll see what we can do. And I guess just before the premiere, we had to say, sorry, this is not going to work. It's not finished. We can't go live with it. So they did, and of course it failed spectacularly. So everything crashed. That was a learning experience. But talking about communication and learning the differences in the mindset between people working TV production and the people working with sort of the web and online. They're just used to trying to get ready. It'll work on the night. Everything will be fine. And if it doesn't, everything will be forgotten by the morning. We try to test stuff in advance. So there was a new show next week. This was a weekly show. But then we actually said, you can't do this. It won't work. So we got them to, okay, we had to do something else. So they used actually the official map provider in Norway, Statens kartvesen, and used that instead on the website. So that crashed. There's another show from a few years ago called Når kjemien stemmer, or Matching Chemistry or something, I guess. A scientific reality dating show where contestants were supposed to find their perfect match using science. And there was a huge success. And at the end of the finale, where the winning couple was announced, after that show was done, the channel host came on and said, and if you'd like to learn more about what happened to the winning couple, you can read that now on NRK.no. And so everyone did. And at that point, this was a few years ago, we were still running most, if not all of our stuff in-house. And everything running through the same load balancer, including all the images and all content delivered to the public. And since this came as a surprise for us that they were going to say that, we were not prepared at all, and the load balancer crashed. And yeah, so that was a learning experience. Try to know when these big events are happening, and try to talk to the people involved in the TV production. And are they going to promote something online? Please tell us. So that was a learning experience. Of course, it had a second season, and the same thing happened. So.
And then I'm going to share my favorite, which is from the Winter Olympics a few years ago, because we started getting a lot of messages from about errors on NRK, that NRK.no is down. And it was from large companies. And we were like, okay, we start debugging. Can we find any errors? No, we couldn't find anything. It's worked. What are you talking about? And then we realized that I talked about this DDoS protection. It turns out Winter Olympics, the large companies had employees watching the show during office hours. And they used the same IP. So they were blocked as attacks.
Yeah.
So we could answer back that it's actually your employees watching the news or the finals at the same time during office hours. So that's why we learned turn on event mode, so that we don't block large companies that want to watch the sports events during office hours.
Actually, we've made a sort of allow list of some huge companies that we don't block their IPs, because we know that there might be a lot of similar traffic.
There are some cities that have lots of companies added to that list.
Yeah, watching out. We're not going to name names, but some previously state-owned oil companies. So there's one big one that we need to talk about. So this was February 15th, 2020. It was the finale of the Norwegian branch of the Eurovision Song Contest, Melodi Grand Prix. And everyone was ready for a wonderful evening of artists and music and voting and stuff like that. And all the previous, this was the finale, and all the previous shows, the semifinals, had all gone without a hitch. And as our intro video might have spoiled, this did not go without a hitch. I'm going to give you a sort of a play-by-play of the events of the evening. I guess kind of as a horror story, but more of a learning experience for everyone. So if you were watching that night, you might remember these guys. So these are the emojis we used during the show. There was a button in the voting app where you were able to react to the current performance with smileys, or I guess, these unfazed smileys, and hearts and like buttons. And then the graphics would show a sort of firework of emojis after the performance. And boy, did you guys post emojis. I think the headlines the next day were something like "Emoji Storm breaks NRK" or something like that. And did it though? Well, it kind of did, but not quite. So we were using Firebase to gather all these, to get all the votes and the emojis from the public. And with the request amount of the votes and the emojis collectively, it started to run into 100% CPU usage, started responding slowly, and it was a bit too tightly coupled with the administration UI. So that became slow or unresponsive. And that was the UI that the graphics people were using to see how many smileys are we going to show, how many thumbs up are we going to show at the fireworks explosion. And when that became too slow, they weren't able to get those numbers in time for when the fireworks were going to happen. So we needed to manually try to fetch those numbers from the database or from fireworks and just call them over to the graphics people, which was, that was stressful. And it was I guess, sort of the first indication that something was amiss. And just to set the scene a bit.
Og så det jo sånn da, at I tider der på et tidspunkt her nå, så har altså da dere I det norske folk bikket 50 millioner emojis der ute, så vi har hatt litt grann trøbbel med det nettsystemet der på NRK.no, men håper at alt skal være på stell etter hvert. Og så skal vi altså da foreta en nydelig avstemning, og forhåpentligvis da, eller garantert, kåre en nydelig vinner av Melodi Grand Prix 2020. Og så håper vi på sikt at vi skal få den avstemmingen I gang. Det jo lov til å drømme om at det skal skje.
Yes, one can only dream. So at that point, the admin tool for voting had become unresponsive. So this admin tool, in addition to getting the numbers of emojis and stuff like that, it was used to launch new voting windows. So again, just like we talked about Stjernekamp, the MGP, there's these small voting windows after the performances, and then for the quarterfinals and semifinals and the final vote. And because of the admin tool being unresponsive, we weren't able to launch the new voting window and launch the new vote. This is something that has to be done manually. You can't plan the voting in advance because you don't know which artists or performers are going to go into the quarterfinals and stuff like that. And also the timings, when is the vote window, that can't be really effectively planned in advance because timing during a live show like this is unreliable. So at this point, we're unable to launch the vote. I think it was the vote going for the quarterfinal, going from 10 artists down to 4. And it was a race against time. Are we able to get that vote up and running and getting it ready and showing it to the people before we had to do something else? Because the show must go on. We can't really say, no, that's we're unable to vote today. But so it was like, can we get it ready? We're almost ready. Can we get it ready? It's almost ready. And the hosts were stalling immeasurably at this time. But unfortunately...
Man har jo alltid en følelse av at det kan gå gærent med dette internettet. Så vi har sikret oss med en B-løsning. Samtidig som det jobbes på spreng, så har vi for lenge siden bestemt at det skulle sitte en sånn folkevalgt jury med vanlige folk. Det familier, det alle mulige folk sitter spredt rundt om I landet og representerer hele Norge akkurat nå. Ja, vi også skuffet. Det lov å bue. Det lov å bue. Ja.
Men vi kan bue på internett.
You can boo the internet. Isn't that great? So the interesting part is that while this was happening and while the hosts have been stalling and then suddenly, okay, there's no time, we have to go to the backup. The backup that is prepared. We didn't, I guess one of the learnings experiences from this is that the backups weren't publicly announced. So the public didn't know that this was something that could happen. That was all the disappointment and booing. But I think almost seconds after the decision was made to go to backup, we got the voting system up and running. And we were able to, okay, now we can launch the vote. No, it's too late. We already announced that we are using backup, so get it ready for the next one. And we did. And we got ready for the semi-final vote with the voting system, without emojis. That one was turned out for the night, but we got it up and running.
Men nå, dere, stemmesystemet vårt opp og går! Halleluja! Halleluja! Så nå, herifra ut, det hele Norge og hele folket som bestemmer hvordan dette går.
I almost get teary-eyed watching that because the warm and fuzzy feeling from when that was happening, when the hosts were now able to announce that to the public, that was great. And the voting service stayed up for the rest of the night. So perfect. We got through it. The quarterfinals, well, we had to back up. No big issues. So that was the end. That was the end of that. The voting service stayed up for the rest of the night. Unfortunately, we started getting reports, or we started seeing reports on Twitter and from other media outlets that people were using this page. And this was a new error page from NRK.no. We just launched it, I think, a few weeks earlier, so not many people had seen this. I think that's why they were a bit surprised. So what happened? Why were this page showing up for some people? Well, when I talked about the vote not being ready at the point it should have been, people started refreshing. People started loading the page again. Is there something wrong on my end? Is it not showing for me? So because the expected usage pattern was that people were going to log in, open the voting app, and then have new voting windows dynamically being loaded into that app and then staying on that page. But when they started reloading, you got new. We talked about in the beginning about everything being interconnected. So that the page load started invoking the login service. Is this user logged in? Oh, let's check. And so we had a lot of unexpected traffic. People went to the front page of NRK.no again, seeing if there's any news there. Have I got the wrong page? Follow the links again. So this peak of traffic at an unexpected time, it should have been okay, but it uncovered a bottleneck in the NRK.no architecture. This is a very simplified view, or how your mental model might be if you deployed something on Kubernetes. Kubernetes is great, but it might be hard. It's a steep learning curve up to a point, and then you figure this out. Yeah, you have the requests hitting the ingress. That one routes it to the proper service. The service routes it to a proper deployment, and that one has a lot of replica pods doing the actual work. So that's the actual servers. That's the stuff doing. That's the one doing stuff. Unfortunately, there is a bit of a climb above that again, where you might have abstracted away a bit much. Because I can hear now people at the back shouting, but what about the ingress controllers? Yes, that is correct. We had forgotten about, or we didn't know, or the correct people didn't know about the ingress controllers. So the ingress controllers are, I guess, just normal Nginx servers running on pods. So the ingress controllers do work as well as the actual applications. So the application running on the pods right on the end there, those were the ones we had scaled up to deliver, or to scale up to meet the traffic that we were expecting. But we hadn't scaled up that ingress. It had some auto-scaling. We hadn't really been considering it because it always just worked. But at this point, it didn't. So it started to lose some connections, and those were the ones getting that error page. Now, we've run all the numbers. We've looked at all the details in the days after the finale, and we know approximately how many people were unable to vote because of this. And we know that that amount, regardless of what they would have voted, would not have changed the outcome of the final vote. Which means that regardless of this error, we did get a legitimate winner at the end of the night. Whew.
Yeah. So even though the night was a nightmare, we still got a worth and gold winner.
Yeah.
And we have learned some things from this. First, we have some positive thoughts that we're quite glad that it happened earlier in the night and not at the end of the night. And it's also good to remember that this was only a TV production. Yeah. It was not some important big news. It would have been worse if this was during the pandemic and we had some critical news to deliver.
Because that's part of our mission, our requirements to deliver important news information to the public during a crisis. So in those cases, we need to have proper backups to make sure we're able to tell something. We're able to give that information to the public using NRK.no, using the other news outlets that we have, radio and TV and such. But again, it was a horrible evening. It ended on a positive note with a worthy winner and all happy thoughts, I guess. And I think that's what we had to talk to you guys about today. So, are there any questions about this or other? Anyone? Anyone?
Great.
Maybe not. Then we just say thank you.